very, very early on the Wednesday morning between the death and the funeral. And I just sat down and wrote it, and it took about an hour and a half, and just came pouring out, really. Actually, it's interesting. Sounds rather sort of bizarre, but I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it, and
for nearly 3 decades, one man stayed almost completely silent while the world argued, speculated, and profited from the legacy of Princess Diana. But now, after years of watching events unfold from a distance, Diana's own brother appears to have reached a point where silence is no longer enough. And if recent reports are accurate, what Charles Spencer allegedly said about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry has left royal watchers asking a question nobody expected to be asking in 2026. Has the man who knew Diana best finally decided to draw a line? Most people assumed this story was about Prince Harry. It wasn't. Most people assumed it was about Meghan Markle. It wasn't. In reality, this story may be about something far more powerful than either of them, who truly controls Diana's legacy. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you were entrusted with protecting the memory of someone the entire world loved, would you open the door to more publicity, or would you keep that door locked forever? That question sits at the very center of everything that happened next. For many viewers, Charles Spencer remains frozen in a single moment in time. The image is unforgettable. Westminster Abbey, September 1997. The funeral of Princess Diana. A grieving younger brother standing before a global audience estimated in the billions, delivering words that echoed far beyond the walls of a church. Yet what makes that moment remarkable is not simply what Charles Spencer said. It is what Charles Spencer did afterward. While countless books, documentaries, interviews, and television specials transformed Princess Diana into one of the most analyzed figures in modern history, Charles Spencer chose an entirely different path. Rather than becoming a regular participant in the growing Diana industry, Charles Spencer retreated to Althorpe, the Spencer family estate, and spent nearly 3 decades protecting something very few people still possess in the modern world: genuine privacy. That decision may sound simple, but consider what it actually meant. Every year brought new offers. Every anniversary created fresh demand. Every major documentary sought access to family archives, personal memories, private photographs, handwritten notes, and stories that only Diana's closest relatives could provide. Yet according to royal observers, Charles Spencer consistently refused to turn Diana's private life into public entertainment. And that raises an important question. Why would a man spend nearly 30 years saying no, only to suddenly become the center of attention again now? The answer may lie in what reportedly arrived on Charles Spencer's desk earlier this year. According to multiple royal commentators, discussions surrounding a major Diana-focused documentary project began generating significant interest behind the scenes. On the surface, the concept appeared compelling. The approach reportedly centered on marking the approaching 30th anniversary of Princess Diana's death, one of the most significant milestones in modern royal history. But there was one complication. The project allegedly required access to things that no network, publisher, or streaming platform had ever successfully obtained. Private archives, family materials, personal memories, and perhaps most importantly, the cooperation of the one man who controls access to much of Diana's protected legacy, Charles Spencer. Now pause for a moment and think about that position. Imagine spending decades protecting a vault that the world desperately wants to open. Imagine rejecting request after request after request, only to discover that the latest proposal is connected to Prince Harry, Diana's youngest son, and Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. Would that make the decision easier? Or would it make the decision even more complicated? Because this is where the story begins to shift in a direction very few people anticipated. At first glance, many observers assumed Charles Spencer would naturally support Prince Harry. After all, Charles Spencer publicly defended Diana throughout her life and after her death. Prince Harry has repeatedly spoken about preserving his mother's memory. On paper, the interests seemed aligned. Yet some royal commentators began noticing something unusual. The relationship between honoring Diana and using Diana's legacy had become increasingly difficult to separate. Over the years, Meghan Markle has frequently been compared to Princess Diana by supporters and critics alike. Prince Harry himself has often drawn parallels between Meghan Markle's experiences and the challenges Princess Diana faced during her years within the royal family. Those comparisons generated headlines around the world, but they also created a larger debate. Where does remembrance end and reinvention begin? Where is the line between tribute and transformation? And perhaps most importantly, who gets to decide? Charles Spencer may never have sought a role in that debate, but circumstances appear to have placed him directly in the middle of it. Suddenly, the quiet guardian of Diana's memory found himself facing questions that extended far beyond family relationships. The discussion was now about ownership of a legacy, control of a historical narrative, and the future of one of the most powerful personal stories in modern royal history. And according to reports, Charles Spencer's response was far more blunt than anyone expected. What happened next reportedly stunned supporters of Prince Harry, surprised critics of Meghan Markle, and may have revealed a deeper divide surrounding Princess Diana's legacy than the public ever realized. But before we get to the response that has everyone talking, there is something much more important we need to understand first. Because to understand why Charles Spencer allegedly reacted the way he did, we have to go back to a painful chapter from Diana's life that still casts a shadow over every decision Charles Spencer makes today. And once you understand that chapter, Charles Spencer's position begins to look very different indeed. If you're enjoying this discussion, take a moment to subscribe and join our growing community of royal watchers. We follow the stories behind the headlines, the history behind the personalities, and the details that often change everything. Because what happened next would reveal a secret many viewers have never heard before, and it may explain why Charles Spencer's answer was never really about Meghan Markle at all. The deeper many royal watchers looked into this story, the more one uncomfortable fact kept resurfacing, and it is a fact that may explain why Charles Spencer reportedly reacted so strongly when discussions about a new Diana-centered project began circulating. The issue was never simply about Prince Harry. The issue was never simply about Meghan Markle. The issue was something far older, far more personal, and far more painful than most people realize. To understand that, we need to revisit one of the most controversial chapters in modern royal history, because buried within that chapter is a piece of history that Charles Spencer has reportedly carried like a weight for decades. Most viewers remember the famous 1995 Panorama interview with Princess Diana. The images remain instantly recognizable. Princess Diana sitting alone. Princess Diana speaking directly to the nation. Princess Diana describing life inside the royal family in a way that shocked audiences across the world. At the time, many people viewed the interview as an act of courage. Others viewed the interview as an act of rebellion. Yet years later, investigations revealed that the circumstances surrounding the interview were far more troubling than the public initially understood. According to findings that emerged many years after Princess Diana's death, journalist Martin Bashir used deceptive methods and fabricated documents in the process of gaining access to Princess Diana. The revelations created outrage throughout Britain and beyond. But for Charles Spencer, the impact was reportedly deeply personal because Charles Spencer had been one of the people involved in introducing Martin Bashir into Princess Diana's orbit. Just pause and think about that for a moment. Imagine spending years believing that a particular decision helped a loved one tell their truth to the world, only to later discover that manipulation and deception played a role in the process. How would that change the way you viewed the media? How would that change the way you viewed documentaries, interviews, streaming platforms, and anyone seeking access to deeply personal family memories? For many royal commentators, this is where the modern story truly begins. Reports suggest that when the full details surrounding the Panorama scandal became public, Charles Spencer was forced to confront painful questions that had lingered for years. Whether fair or unfair, Charles Spencer reportedly felt a profound responsibility to ensure that Princess Diana's vulnerability would never again become a commercial product for public consumption. Suddenly, Charles Spencer's decades of protecting archives, rejecting projects, and limiting access begin to make far more sense. And this is where the conversation becomes even more interesting. Because while much of the public sees Princess Diana as a global icon, Charles Spencer sees something entirely different. Charles Spencer sees a sister. Charles Spencer remembers family gatherings. Charles Spencer remembers private conversations. Charles Spencer remembers the version of Princess Diana that existed before worldwide fame transformed every aspect of her life. That distinction matters because protecting a public figure and protecting a family member are not always the same thing. Now let me ask you something. If you possessed private diaries, personal letters, home movies, and intimate memories belonging to someone who can no longer consent to their publication, would you feel obligated to share those materials with the world, or would you feel obligated to protect them forever? That question sits at the center of everything Charles Spencer reportedly faced. As the years passed, Prince Harry increasingly embraced public discussions about Princess Diana's legacy. Through interviews, documentaries, books, speeches, and public appearances, Prince Harry often spoke about the influence Princess Diana continued to have on his life. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, also became connected to that conversation as comparisons between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana became increasingly common across international media. Some supporters viewed those comparisons as natural. Others viewed those comparisons as excessive. Yet regardless of where someone stood, one reality became impossible to ignore. Princess Diana's story remained one of the most powerful narratives in the modern world. And powerful narratives attract powerful commercial interest. By the early 2020s, streaming platforms were competing aggressively for exclusive content. Documentaries became major business. Personal stories became valuable intellectual property. Family history became entertainment. Audiences demanded deeper access, greater authenticity, and more emotional storytelling than ever before. From a business perspective, the appeal of a definitive Princess Diana documentary was obvious. But from Charles Spencer's perspective, the situation may have looked very different. Because once private archives leave a family's control, those materials rarely return. Once unseen footage enters the public domain, those images can be replayed forever. Once private diaries become public documents, those words no longer belong exclusively to the person who wrote them. And that reality may explain why reports surrounding the alleged proposal generated so much attention among royal observers. According to commentators following the situation, the proposal reportedly sought access to highly sensitive materials connected to Princess Diana's life. We are not talking about photographs already seen by millions. We are not talking about publicly available footage. We are talking about material that has remained protected for decades. That changes the equation entirely. Suddenly, this was no longer a discussion about creating another documentary. This was a discussion about opening a vault that had remained closed since 1997. Can you see why Charles Spencer may have viewed the matter differently from Prince Harry? Prince Harry, as Princess Diana's son, understandably carries memories, emotions, and experiences that belong uniquely to Prince Harry. Yet Charles Spencer, as Princess Diana's brother, carries a different responsibility, one connected not only to memory but also to preservation. Those responsibilities are not necessarily identical, and that is where the tension begins to emerge. The more analysts examined the situation, the more another question surfaced. Was this disagreement really about family conflict, or was it about competing visions of how Princess Diana should be remembered in the 21st century? One vision emphasizes storytelling. Another vision emphasizes protection. One vision believes sharing keeps memories alive. Another vision believes privacy preserves dignity. Neither position is easy to dismiss. In fact, that may be precisely why the story has generated so much discussion among royal watchers across Britain, the United States, Canada, and Australia. Because unlike many royal controversies, this debate does not offer simple heroes and villains. Instead, this debate forces people to confront uncomfortable questions about grief, ownership, family loyalty, public interest, and commercial influence. And just when many observers believe the disagreement could not become any more complicated, another development reportedly began unfolding behind the scenes. Because while attention remained focused on Charles Spencer, Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle, some reports suggested that another royal figure was quietly reaching remarkably similar conclusions regarding Princess Diana's legacy. A figure with even more at stake. A figure who rarely speaks publicly about family disputes. A figure preparing for a future unlike any other member of the royal family. Prince William, the future king. And what royal commentators began noticing about the apparent alignment between Charles Spencer and Prince William would transform the entire conversation surrounding the story. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of royal watchers, because the next part of the story takes us inside a relationship that many people have completely overlooked And understanding that relationship may reveal why the reported response from Charles Spencer carried far greater consequences than anyone initially realized. Because what happened next was not simply about Meghan Markle, not simply about Prince Harry, and not even simply about Princess Diana. What happened next touched the future of the monarchy itself, and that is where the story becomes truly extraordinary. What makes this chapter of the story so fascinating is that the conversation suddenly stops being about a documentary proposal and starts becoming about something much larger. The deeper royal commentators looked into the reported disagreement, the more attention shifted toward an unexpected possibility. What if Charles Spencer was not standing alone? What if the concerns reportedly held by Charles Spencer were quietly shared by another figure whose connection to Princess Diana was every bit as personal, but whose responsibilities were infinitely more complicated? That figure, of course, is Prince William, the future king. For years, Prince William and Prince Harry have often been discussed as though both brothers view their mother's legacy through exactly the same lens. Yet when you examine the paths Prince William and Prince Harry have taken since the death of Princess Diana, important differences begin to emerge. Prince Harry has frequently chosen public discussion. Prince Harry has spoken openly about grief, trauma, mental health, and the lasting impact of losing Princess Diana at such a young age. Prince William, by contrast, has generally adopted a more restrained approach, speaking about Princess Diana when necessary but rarely making Princess Diana the centerpiece of public projects. That distinction may not sound significant at first, but it becomes much more meaningful when viewed through the lens of responsibility. After all, Prince William is not simply Princess Diana's eldest son. Prince William is also the future king. Every public decision made by Prince William carries implications, not only for Prince William personally, but also for the institution Prince William will one day lead. Now let me ask you something. If you knew that every statement you made would be examined by governments, media organizations, historians, and future generations, would you approach family history differently from someone whose role allows greater personal freedom? Many royal observers believe the answer is obvious. Over time, reports have suggested that Prince William has grown increasingly protective of Princess Diana's memory. Not because Prince William wants to erase history, but because Prince William understands how easily history can become a commercial product once powerful business interests become involved. That concern reportedly intensified following the controversy surrounding Martin Bashir and the Panorama interview. While Prince Harry publicly condemned the circumstances surrounding the interview, Prince William's response carried a different tone. Prince William spoke not only about personal pain, but also about the broader consequences of media manipulation. Prince William's remarks suggested a deep concern for the lasting damage caused when vulnerable individuals become material for public consumption. And suddenly an intriguing picture begins to emerge. Charles Spencer reportedly spent decades protecting private archives. Prince William reportedly became increasingly protective of Princess Diana's image. Both men arrived at similar conclusions through different experiences. One man was Princess Diana's brother. The other man was Princess Diana's eldest son. Can you see why some royal commentators began describing this as an unexpected alignment rather than a coincidence? The situation becomes even more interesting when viewed against the backdrop of Prince Harry's evolving public role. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped away from royal duties and established a new life in California, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle entered an entirely different world. Public speaking engagements, media partnerships, documentaries, publishing deals, streaming agreements, and commercial ventures became major components of life outside the royal family. There is nothing inherently unusual about that transition. Many public figures pursue media opportunities. Many former officials build careers through books and documentaries. Yet Prince Harry and Meghan Markle faced a unique challenge. The strongest public interest surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle often remained connected to royal history. Think about that carefully. The projects that generated the most attention were rarely the projects furthest removed from the monarchy. In many cases, the opposite was true. The closer a project moved toward royal experiences, royal relationships, and royal memories, the stronger public engagement often became. That reality created a dilemma that still exists today. How do Prince Harry and Meghan Markle establish an independent identity while remaining connected to the very history that attracts global attention? For supporters of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the answer is straightforward. Prince Harry has every right to tell Prince Harry's story. Princess Diana shaped Prince Harry's life. Princess Diana's death shaped Prince Harry's future. No individual can reasonably expect Prince Harry to remain silent about such a defining experience. Yet critics raise a different question. At what point does sharing a personal experience become monetizing a shared family legacy? Notice how difficult that question is to answer. There are no simple boundaries. There is no universally accepted rulebook. There's no clear line that everyone agrees upon. That ambiguity is precisely why this debate continues, generating such intense discussion among royal watchers. And then another development reportedly added an entirely new layer to the story.
I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me.
According to reports circulating among royal commentators, Charles Spencer allegedly reached out regarding concerns about the broader direction of the ongoing family conflict. What makes those reports remarkable is not simply the alleged communication itself. What makes those reports remarkable is the underlying message reportedly being conveyed. The concern was not merely about family disagreements. The concern was about public perception. The concern was about institutional stability. The concern was about what happens when a royal dispute evolves into a permanent global media narrative. That is a very different conversation. For years, headlines focused on personal tensions between Prince William and Prince Harry. Yet some commentators began suggesting that Charles Spencer's perspective may have evolved beyond individual grievances. Reports indicated that Charles Spencer was increasingly concerned about the damage prolonged conflict could inflict upon everyone involved, including Prince Harry himself. Think about how extraordinary that possibility would be. The same Charles Spencer who challenged royal traditions after Princess Diana's death. The same Charles Spencer who openly criticized aspects of the establishment in the past. The same Charles Spencer who became one of Princess Diana's most visible defenders. Now reportedly finding common ground with Prince William, the future king, on questions involving legacy, reputation, and long-term stability. That development caught many observers completely off guard, because for years, public narratives often positioned Charles Spencer and Prince William on one side while Prince Harry and Meghan Markle occupied another. Yet reality is rarely that simple. Family relationships are rarely that simple. Historical legacies are certainly never that simple. And this is where the story takes another unexpected turn. Because while discussions surrounding Prince William, Prince Harry, and Charles Spencer continued to intensify, another question quietly emerged behind the scenes. What role, if any, did Meghan Markle play in shaping the concerns that reportedly alarmed Charles Spencer so deeply? Was this really about access to archives? Was this really about documentaries? Or had Charles Spencer become increasingly uncomfortable with a much broader pattern that had been developing for years? Before we answer that question, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this deep dive into the royal family. These stories are often far more complex than the headlines suggest, and the next chapter may reveal why Meghan Markle's connection to Princess Diana became one of the most sensitive and controversial topics in modern royal history. Because once royal observers began examining that connection more closely, a series of moments stretching back years suddenly looked very different, and those moments may hold the key to understanding why Charles Spencer's reported reaction was so decisive. The more royal watchers examined the growing controversy surrounding Charles Spencer, Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle, the more one pattern kept resurfacing, and it is a pattern that may explain why the reported reaction from Diana's brother appeared so unusually firm. The issue was no longer confined to a single documentary proposal or a single disagreement over access to private archives. Instead, the discussion had expanded into a much larger question that has quietly followed Meghan Markle for years. Why has the comparison between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana become so powerful, so persistent, and at times so controversial? That question matters because understanding Charles Spencer's perspective may require understanding how those comparisons evolved in the first place. When Meghan Markle married Prince Harry in 2018, public fascination was immediate. Meghan Markle was different from previous royal brides in several obvious ways. Meghan Markle arrived with an established career, international recognition, and a modern public profile that instantly attracted worldwide attention. Supporters saw Meghan Markle as a refreshing new figure capable of helping the royal family connect with changing generations. Critics questioned whether Meghan Markle would be comfortable within the traditions and constraints of royal life. Yet almost immediately, another narrative began emerging. Media outlets, commentators, and social media users increasingly drew parallels between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana. At first, many of those comparisons seemed relatively harmless. Articles discussed fashion similarities. Headlines focused on charitable work. Commentators highlighted public popularity. Photographs were placed side by side. Stories were compared. Personal experiences were analyzed. But then something more significant began happening. The comparisons gradually shifted away from style and toward struggle. Instead of discussing clothing choices or public appearances, commentators began comparing Meghan Markle's experiences within the royal family to Princess Diana's experiences decades earlier. Stories about media pressure, institutional challenges, public scrutiny, and personal hardship increasingly placed Meghan Markle and Princess Diana within the same narrative framework. Now let me ask you something. If a comparison is repeated often enough by newspapers, television programs, documentaries, commentators, and online discussions, does that comparison eventually become accepted as reality regardless of how accurate it may be? That question sits at the center of this entire debate, because according to many royal observers, Charles Spencer reportedly watched these developments with increasing concern. Not necessarily because Charles Spencer opposed Meghan Markle personally, but because Charles Spencer understood something that few others could fully appreciate. Charles Spencer knew Princess Diana as a real person rather than a global symbol. That distinction is crucial. Most people know Princess Diana through photographs, documentaries, biographies, interviews, and public appearances. Charles Spencer knew Princess Diana before worldwide fame transformed Princess Diana into an international phenomenon. Charles Spencer knew the private sister behind the public image. Charles Spencer knew the complicated human being behind the mythology. And that may explain why repeated comparisons between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana potentially raise difficult questions. Because while public narratives often simplify people into symbols, family members tend to remember details that resist simplification. The situation became even more complicated as Prince Harry increasingly referenced similarities between Meghan Markle's experiences and Princess Diana's experiences. Prince Harry repeatedly expressed concern about media treatment, public pressure, and the emotional consequences of relentless scrutiny. For Prince Harry, those concerns were deeply personal because Prince Harry had lived through the devastating aftermath of Princess Diana's death. Many viewers sympathized with that perspective. Many viewers believed Prince Harry was attempting to prevent history from repeating itself. Yet others interpreted the situation differently. Some critics argued that drawing direct parallels between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana risked overlooking important differences in circumstance, era, and context. According to those commentators, comparisons that initially appeared emotional gradually became strategic, particularly when repeated across interviews, documentaries, streaming projects, and public discussions. Whether that interpretation is fair remains fiercely debated. But here is where the story becomes especially interesting. Reports suggest that Charles Spencer was never particularly interested in participating publicly in that debate. Charles Spencer rarely inserted himself into headline-driven royal controversies. Charles Spencer generally avoided becoming a regular commentator on family disputes. Charles Spencer largely remained focused on preserving Althorp and protecting Princess Diana's private legacy. In other words, Charles Spencer's silence became part of the story, and silence can sometimes be more revealing than public statements. Think about it carefully. When public figures constantly respond to controversy, audiences become accustomed to hearing their opinions. When public figures remain silent for years and then suddenly become associated with a strong reaction, people naturally pay closer attention. That appears to be exactly what happened here. According to reports surrounding the alleged documentary discussions, the proposal was not merely seeking access to historical material. Royal commentators suggested that the project may have intended to reinforce the narrative connecting Meghan Markle to Princess Diana's legacy. If true, that detail changes everything. Because from one perspective, the concept might appear entirely reasonable. Meghan Markle is married to Prince Harry. Prince Harry is Princess Diana's son. Exploring those connections could be viewed as a legitimate storytelling approach. Yet from another perspective, the concept raises a different concern. Was Princess Diana's story being honored, or was Princess Diana's story being repurposed? Can you see why reasonable people might arrive at very different answers? And can you also see why Charles Spencer, as the guardian of much of Princess Diana's private history, might evaluate that question differently than streaming executives, producers, or public commentators? The deeper analysts looked, the more they realized that this conflict was never really about personalities alone. This conflict was about ownership of meaning. Who determines how Princess Diana is remembered? Who decides which aspects of Princess Diana's life become public narratives? Who controls access to the materials capable of shaping future interpretations of Princess Diana's legacy? For nearly 30 years, the answer to those questions largely remained the same. Charles Spencer controlled access to some of the most valuable pieces of that history. That reality gave Charles Spencer a unique form of influence, not because Charles Spencer sought power, but because Charles Spencer possessed something everybody else wanted: access. And when access is denied, reactions can be significant. This is particularly true during a period when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reportedly faced increasing pressure surrounding media ventures, audience expectations, and the challenge of sustaining long-term public interest. Many commentators observe that projects connected to royal history often generated greater attention than projects unrelated to royal history. That observation may help explain why Princess Diana's legacy remains such a powerful focal point. But it also introduces another question. What happens when one side views Princess Diana's story as something that should continue evolving through new public interpretations, while another side views Princess Diana's story as something that requires protection from further commercialization? That conflict may be impossible to resolve completely because both perspectives emerge from genuine beliefs rather than simple opportunism. And yet, according to reports, Charles Spencer still reached a conclusion that reportedly stunned some observers, disappointed others, and reinforced the belief that Diana's brother remains determined to protect boundaries that have existed since 1997. Before we move forward, make sure you subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of royal watchers, because the final chapter of this story takes us to the most important question of all. After decades of family tensions, media battles, competing narratives, and unresolved disagreements, what does this controversy actually reveal about Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Prince William, King Charles III, and the future of Princess Diana's legacy? Because the answer may be far more surprising than anyone expected, and it could completely change the way this entire story is remembered. And that brings us to the question that may ultimately define this entire story, because after all the headlines, all the speculation, all the reported disagreements, and all the debate surrounding Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and Charles Spencer, the issue seems to come back to one surprisingly simple idea: trust. Not money, not documentaries, not streaming platforms. Trust. When royal commentators discuss the widening distance between Prince Harry and Prince William, the future king, trust appears again. When royal reporters analyze the relationship between Meghan Markle and senior members of the royal family, trust appears again. When discussions turn toward access to Princess Diana's private archives, personal diaries, and unseen family materials, trust appears once more. That pattern is difficult to ignore. Because if Charles Spencer truly viewed the reported proposal with skepticism, perhaps the reaction was never about opposing Prince Harry personally. Perhaps the reaction was about protecting something Charles Spencer believes cannot be restored once it is lost. And that is where this story becomes surprisingly human. Imagine carrying memories of a sister for nearly 3 decades. Imagine watching the world transform that sister into a global symbol, a cultural icon, and a historical figure discussed by people who never met her. Then imagine becoming the guardian of private letters, private memories, and private moments that nobody else can fully understand. Would you open that vault, or would you spend the rest of your life protecting it? That is the question many viewers now find themselves asking. At the same time, there is another perspective that deserves serious consideration. Prince Harry is not simply a public figure discussing history. Prince Harry is Princess Diana's son. Prince Harry experienced a loss that shaped the entire course of Prince Harry's life. Every major chapter of Prince Harry's public journey, from military service to royal duties to life in California with Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, has unfolded beneath the shadow of that loss. Can anyone truly tell Prince Harry how Prince Harry should remember Princess Diana? Can anyone fully understand what that experience felt like from Prince Harry's perspective? That is why this debate remains so emotionally powerful. Reasonable people can examine the same facts and reach entirely different conclusions. Some viewers will believe Charles Spencer is fulfilling a promise made decades ago, protecting Princess Diana from becoming a commercial product once again. Other viewers will believe Prince Harry has every right to share stories connected to Princess Diana's life and legacy. Neither position disappears easily because both positions emerge from genuine emotional truths. And perhaps that is exactly why this controversy has captured so much attention around the world. Because beneath the royal titles, beneath the palace walls, beneath the documentaries and media deals, this is still a story about family. This is still a story about grief. This is still a story about people struggling to decide how the memory of someone deeply loved should be carried into the future. Yet there may be one final detail worth considering. Throughout all of these reported disagreements, one thing has remained remarkably consistent. Charles Spencer has continued guarding access to Princess Diana's most private history. Prince William, the future king, has remained notably protective of Princess Diana's legacy. Prince Harry has continued speaking openly about Princess Diana's influence. Meghan Markle has continued to occupy a place within a narrative that many people compare to Princess Diana's story. Different approaches, different priorities, different beliefs, but all connected to the same woman. And perhaps that is the real reason this story refuses to disappear. Because the world is not simply debating a documentary proposal. The world is debating who gets to shape the next chapter of Princess Diana's legacy. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Charles Spencer was right to reportedly draw a firm line around Princess Diana's private archives? Do you believe Prince Harry should have greater access to tell Princess Diana's story in whatever way Prince Harry believes is appropriate? Or do you think there is a middle ground that neither side has found yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this is one of those royal debates where every perspective reveals something important. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the royal family, Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales, King Charles III, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the lasting legacy of Princess Diana, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us for future discussions. Because one thing is certain, the story surrounding Princess Diana's legacy is far from over, and if new developments emerge involving Charles Spencer, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Prince William, or Buckingham Palace, you can be sure we will be here to examine every detail together. Until next time, thank you for watching, thank you for being part of the conversation, and as always, stay curious,